All right, welcome everybody to a live episode of Mike's Money Picks. This is the Week 1 College Football DFS live show, and I am here with Zach Green. You remember him from the Week 0 show. Zach, aka Big Country DFS. Zach, have you been able to watch a whole lot of Thursday games, or you kind of been in and out?
Yeah, well, as you can see, I'm an Oklahoma State fan, but they got the game for me blacked out on ESPN Plus. I don't understand why. So I went out to eat with my wife, and then just kind of been chilling.
So blacked out on ESPN Plus?
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that.
Yeah, I've never heard of that happening. I feel like if you pay for ESPN Plus, you should have the rights to the game, but oh well, media rights deals make no sense to me. So yeah, it's been quite the adventure here. I do apologize for the lateness for anybody waiting. So basically, my wife at her school tonight, she had curriculum night, so she had to be out, hobnobbing with all the parents, and so I had both the kids at home alone, which was an adventure. And the only metaphor I can compare it to is it's like defending a 2-on-1 fast break in basketball. Like if you try to play the middle and like just let them attack you, like you're not going to get anything done. So what you got to do, you got to pick one, make them decision pass shoot, just keep making them, just keep picking one. Right. And so I eventually worked it out so that one was asleep, which allowed me to get the second one asleep. And then naturally one woke up. So yeah, it's been a chaotic night, but it's always fun. Like, definitely having kids is an adventure, but there's some nights that are more difficult than others. So yeah, we are here to talk the Week 1 main slate of DFS. We're talking the Saturday main slate. Maybe if time permits at the end, maybe we can talk a little bit about the Friday slate. If you're sitting there watching in the chat and you want us to talk about any player, any game, any slate specifically, let us know because we're here for you guys at the end of the day. And we're here to get out all the information to you guys to help you win with your DFS lineups here on Saturday. So we got Dan Brown in the chat. Dan, proud member of the Fantasy Corner Discord. Happy to have Dan watching. The Thursday games have been they've been not really all that interesting. Like I feel like I haven't really missed a whole lot by not watching a whole lot of them. So we'll see how that goes. So we're going to go ahead and dive into this Saturday slate. So what you're about to see on your screens, if you're watching on YouTube, is Zach's sheet for the day for August 30th. That is the Saturday main slate. Zach, can you tell the people where they can find this wonderful sheet?
Yeah, so I've been posting them on Twitter at Big Country DFS, but also in our Discord. And so you can find it in the Fantasy Corner Discord or Big Country DFS Discord. And like I mentioned last week, always free, just several people. And it's not just that's one thing I want to mention, it's not just my thoughts that go into this. It's usually me and you and several others that we all kind of come together. Usually the core is mostly probably more mine, but all the colors and all that, and even my dad helps with doing getting all the stats updated. Like if you scroll at the bottom down towards the bottom of the page, there's stats, which they aren't loaded in for 2025 yet, but it'll have all the stats for last year and as well as this year whenever we get a couple games in. So if you want to ever check out stats for a certain team, like if they're good pass offense, pass defense, whatever.
And as the season goes on, that's so helpful to have too. Like just so helpful. Because you really want to know whether your guys have a good matchup or not as the season goes on. And once we have like a volume, like actual sample size to go off of, having those stats there in one place, able to check it with a cheat sheet, as opposed to, back, when I first started doing research for shows, and still have to do this at times, just Google searching this team rush yards allowed per game, or, going to team rankings and clicking through all the different options. Like having it there in one place is a super helpful resource. And then also I do want to point out with the sheet, if this is something that can really help you if you are new or advanced in terms of playing college football DFS, like if you're new, it's just giving you a whole lot of names that you can look and see that, okay, I can click this guy into my lineup with confidence. If you're advanced, then it's a really great way to kind of organize your thoughts, make a player pool, and go from there. So cannot stress enough how good of a job Zach does on the sheets, and the rest of the people helping you do with the sheets as well. So one thing I want to talk before we get started into like the just the individual positions, which we will do, is non-conference slate strategy. Because I think that's something that, my video for the Saturday slate is out. It's something that I didn't discuss enough, is when you have non-conference games, you have got such a wide variety of game environments. You've got, the games of the week, right? The Texas, Ohio States. You've got the G5 team versus G5 team matchups like a UMass and a Temple, right? You got those matchups. Then you got the anticipated blowouts like your Penn State Nevadas. Like there's just such a variance in terms of the game environments. So Zach, I want to throw it to you. When you have these non-conference slates where there's such a variety in game environment as opposed to the conference slates where they're all kind of similar, do you have one that you prefer to target as opposed to the other, or a certain way you like to target certain games?
Yeah, so kind of like what I do, especially, and this is not just non-conference, but when we get into conference play too, when we have such a big slate, anytime you can narrow down games is great in my opinion. So like Penn State, Georgia, everyone's going to want to play, like Katron Allen, Nick Singleton, Nate Frazier, all those types of guys, but they're expensive. And with that big of a spread, if they're up 42-0 at halftime, those guys aren't playing the rest of the game. And so you really have to consider, the game environment like that, because Penn State and Georgia, I mean, they could have just not even had those games on the slate and just done 10 games and I would have been fine with it.
Right.
So I kind of look at it like that. And then on the other side of that, like Texas, Ohio State, two really, premier teams, going to be the game of the week to watch. But DFS wise, again, it's going to be probably one of those knockout, drag out defensive struggle to score points, probably
like we saw out of them last year.
Yeah, with good defenses. And so it's kind of, and so what you want to look at is some of those teams like I kind of like this Mississippi State Southern Miss game because
100%.
Neither one of them have good defense. We got the high total. I think the spread's a little high. I also think the spread's a little high on the Maryland Florida Atlantic game because you have Veltkamp and Messer coming over from Western Kentucky, and so I think they're going to be able to keep that competitive. So those are probably my top two games right there that I want to stack, is those first two right there. But yeah, that's kind of how I kind of look at it, and I try to avoid pieces unless they're cheap from like the 20 plus spreads. But in a way, you could also look at it with the GPP. You could get some of these second string guys from those really good teams like Indiana, Penn State, and Georgia, and if they have a good second half, But sometimes we see they just run the ball the whole time in the second half. They're just not really trying to score.
Right. Like I feel like trying to do that. I really last year I feel like I did that more than I ever had before, and it didn't really work out for me as much. I just felt like I was trying to get too cute by trying to do that and trying to find the right second or third string guy to score. So let's see how good your memory is, Zach. Do you remember a whole lot about week 1 last year?
Probably. No. Really, yeah, it's been a long time.
So I went back and looked at it. And, as you get older, as you do this a lot, right? Like all the slates, all the weeks tend to run together in your mind. So I remember this game, but I didn't remember that it was on week 1. But did you know that the game to stack last year in week 1 was Syracuse versus Ohio?
Oh, I think I kind of remember that game.
So that ended up being the game for week 1, because what you ended up happening was Syracuse, which we didn't really expect, turns into this high-octane, no-huddle, throw it all over the yard, Kyle McCord going crazy offense. And Trevor Pena was a starter for the first time. He was 3K, so he was like the best value play you could have had. and then LaQuint Allen and Rondé Gadsden played well. And on the Ohio side, their running back one, Anthony Tyus, ran for 200 yards. And their wide receiver one, Coleman Owen, had double-digit catches over 100 yards. So, like, in terms of the overall game flow, it was, I want to say, like 38-24 or something like that. So what you had was an ACC G5 matchup where good G5 offense scores points against bad P4 defense, and the game just keeps going back and forth because you have, the ability for both teams to score points. So, in terms of looking at that, I think you hit the nail on the head. The two games that could be that here on this slate are probably Mississippi State Southern Miss and Maryland FAU. And those are probably the main games that I'm going to be interested in stacking. I think I'm going to take a few shots at Tennessee Syracuse. We're going to talk about a few of those players here in a second. I think I'm going to take a few shots at that game as well. But I think you're 100% right. Like, a lot of these games to me are cross-offs, and the only two that I'm really going to go out of my way to build game stacks for are that Mississippi State Southern Miss game and then Maryland FAU game, because those are the two that I could see being that Syracuse Ohio type of environment where it ends up being pretty close. Both offenses end up having success. That's really what you want to ignite a game stack.
Yeah, I agree.
So now, are you ready to hop in and talk position by position?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so let's start off with quarterback. And we got all the quarterbacks for this slate that we know that are starting listed here, right? Because some of these teams still haven't released depth charts. And obviously, we're recording this on Thursday night. We've got a decent amount of information, decent amount of depth charts, but there's still some teams out there that are being coy with them because they always will, right? So among these quarterbacks, Zach, pick your favorite here for this Saturday slate, and I'll see if we're in agreement.
Okay, well, you can kind of see on the other side over there with the core, but Blake Shipp, yeah, because he was doing great until he had that season-ending injury last year, and we know with Jeff Levy's offense what we can expect from the offense there, and I have a rule kind of, if a guy is a dual threat quarterback and he's under 7,000, it's just a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, I think Shapen, I think he's going to be one of my most popular quarterbacks on the slate as well. Just that offense that he's in is just historically so good for quarterbacks. And I think Southern Miss is going to be improved, but Mississippi State's offense last year, when Shapen was at quarterback, even when Van Buren was at quarterback, they were still scoring points against SEC competition. So they're going to be able to go up and down and score points against, even a good G5 team in Southern Miss. Because you got to remember, Southern Miss is basically just Marshall now. They're like Marshall with alternate uniforms in a different stadium at this point. So I really do think that Shapen really can play, and like we said, that's a game that you can really look at stacking. So I'm going to give a slightly different nominee for that one, Zach. I am going to nominate, now this is just my first run through, I'm going to nominate Ryan Brown from Purdue as my favorite quarterback of the day as we're recording this right now. Will that stand up until Saturday morning? TBD. But am I a crazy person for targeting somebody from Purdue?
Well, I don't know. Just because it's Purdue, and I think they could run. That's why I like Maccabee. But
yes,
I mean, he's also cheap, so that helps a lot too.
That's the biggest thing, is like when you start looking at like a point per dollar basis for all these guys on the slate, I just really like the ability to get a starting quarterback that has rushing upside in an offense that we expect to be improved against a bad G5 team. Like, I just think that that's a really winning combination that you have with Ryan Brown. And I think if you're using optimizers or projections, he's going to project well. He's going to show up well in those type of environments. And I definitely think he's a guy that I'm going to have a lot of. So let's go to the other end of the spectrum now, Zach. Now, you can make this as hot of a take as you want to make it. Is there a quarterback that you're going to cross off for this slate?
Probably if I had to pick one, it'd probably be Drew Aller, because Arch Manning's only $100 more, and you have Sayin for $1,200 less, and you have Stockton, who's less. And I've just never been a fan of Drew Aller. I know he runs, but I mean, you got Allen and Singleton. They didn't go anywhere, and so they take majority of the carries. If they don't, if they don't have to run Allard, they're not going to. And so I just kind of think he's at the price where, and I don't even really like Manning a whole lot either, just because it's going to be his first game, a real game that he's taking the reins, and it's a tough place to, tough game to start with as the starting quarterback. So
I agree with that sentiment, but like you remember the old cartoons where like they would make a pie and put it on the windowsill, and then like you'd have like the dog or something that would just like smell the pie and just like float to it. That's me right now with Arch Manning. Like the pie is on the windowsill. I cannot resist it. Like I don't care what the price is. I don't care what the opponent is. It's Arch Manning, and he's going to make my player pool. And I think that there's enough value elsewhere that you can fit him in your lineups. And he's probably, far from the optimal play in terms of a projection, in terms of a points per dollar basis, but he's got a ton of upside. And there's a chance that, what if he just goes absolutely nuclear? And you also hit the nail on the head talking about Hour. Like, why would I play Hour when I can just go up $100 to Arch Manning, or I could go down $300 or $400 to Gunnar Stockton, who's a dual threat, right? Like, I think those guys are much better options from a DFS perspective than Hour. And I'm going to compare Drew Hour here. Yeah, Darren in the chat saying I'm a homer. Yeah, I know. It's okay. With Drew Hour, he reminds me kind of in DFS of playing JJ McCarthy a few years back, where it's like this guy's a good real life quarterback. He's on a good team, but they're just not a pass first team, and they're never going to be a pass first team. Like it just feels like it would be a fluky outcome for him to hit value at that salary. Like it doesn't feel like it's the most likely thing to happen. You agree with that?
yeah, I agree. That's why I'm just like, if I'm going to pay up, it's probably just going to be Manning or like we mentioned Stockton or even Simpson at 8,000. But I also kind of like Veltkamp at 70 or 76. I can't read. And another guy kind of along with your take on Ryan Brown that I want to just mention is Zach Calzada. He's only 5,300 starting for Kentucky against Toledo, and he was a highly touted recruit and went to Texas A&M. Things didn't kind of work out there. But he's another dual threat for cheap.
Yeah. I think it's a solid matchup for Calzada, right? Like I would not dare put him in my player pool if he was playing like a Texas or a Georgia or an Alabama or somebody like that. But you got him going against Toledo at that price tag. I was not really all that warm on him when the slate came out, but like you start doing the math on the fantasy points and the salary, and that's not looking that bad right now. Now, one more guy I will add. I want to talk about this guy specifically. Do you have any strong thoughts on Joey Aguilar? Because my take on him is that there's a chance that this game really shoots out. And I think he's a much better fit for the system than Nico was. I think when I just watched Nico last year, he just sat in the pocket like he wasn't a decisive, aggressive player. And if you've ever watched Joey Aguilar, that's like the first word that would come to my mind is aggressive. He is a gunslinger. And so I think it could go really well or it could go really poorly. But if you're playing GPPs, which I do, then Joey Aguilar is a guy that I think's got to make your player pool. Do you agree with me on Aguilar, or are you going somewhere else?
No, I'm glad you mentioned him too, because I was going to bring him up as well. He was good at App State, and he's another dual threat guy. He's cheap. This game is also going to be indoors, so
correct, in Atlanta.
We have all these games being affected by the weather tonight, kind of screwing things up, and so you won't have to worry about that. And so being indoors. You're not going to have any rain, lightning delays, because those lightning delays can really mess you up mentally, especially if you're sitting around for an hour, 2 hours. Oh, here we're getting another lightning strike. We're going to sit for another 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree. I've always been kind of fond of Aguilar, and now that he's on a better team, I like the matchup too.
Yeah, and I'm not saying he's a great quarterback or that he's like, going to come in and be what Hendon Hooker was for this Tennessee offense a few years back, but like he's a fun to watch quarterback. He's a gunslinger. He takes chances, and if you're playing this game of DFS for ceiling, he's a guy that has a really high ceiling, and that's the argument that I think we can really make for Aguilar. So let's go ahead and move on to running backs now. So I'm gonna be honest with you, this was the area of my pool where I was the absolute narrowest on the Thursday night slate. Now it's TBD how it's going to work out as I, have some of these games up on my TV in my living room. It's TBD how that's going to work out, but I only played 6 running backs, and I'm looking to kind of do the same here. There's not really a whole lot of guys that kind of pique my interest at running back, if I'm being honest. So let's start the same way we did quarterback. Who is your overall top running back play on this slate?
That was kind of tough for me. I ended up going with Maccabee just because I feel like Purdue's going to try to run it, and Ball State, not that great on defense, especially against. I mean, the last game of the season against Ohio, the quarterback and the running back both ran for over 100 yards on them.
Yeah.
So and the price is cheap. I think he probably should be more like a 7,000 guy, and so, but. People are going to go for the sexy names like Bama. Bama's starting running back because of the injuries is 5,800 with Richard Young, and so I don't know that Maccabee. I mean, he might get ownership, but he may not either. With people going other directions.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I'm not that interested in Richard Young. I think when you look at the way Bama's going to operate, I'm not so certain they're going to be all that run heavy, and I'm not so certain it's going to be like all Richard Young. You look at what Ryan Grubb did when he was at Washington a few years back. It was not the best offense for a running back to be in because it was a lot of downfield throws. And if they're doing that with Ty Simpson, that's not going to be great for a chalky Richard Young. That's just kind of my take on it. So I'm kind of out on him. I like your call on Maccabee. The one thing I will add is I do think that kind of 6K range for running back is where a lot of my intrigue is, right? Because I like Jay Ducker from Temple, and I think he's going a little under the radar. He's not like a sexy name that people are going to remember. If you watched a lot of Tuesday Night Football last year, you might remember him from Sam Houston State. But he's got a great matchup against UMass, and that's a game that Temple should win and should be positive game flow for him. And the new head coach, Casey Keeler, is the same one he played for at Sam Houston. That should be a good spot for him. And I really think that that's a reasonable price tag, good matchup, under the radar guy for Jay Ducker.
Yeah, I like him as well. He was another guy that was on my radar as well.
So one thing I will add also, the optimizer site that I have been using the last 2 years for college football, it's not one of the biggest ones. I personally really like it, though. It's DFS Hero. I'm not going to kind of show their full product on the screen because that wouldn't be exactly fair to them. But their initial projections for Saturday's slate, when you sort it by value, Seth McGowan shows up number 1, followed by Devon Booth, Daniel Hill, who would be Richard Young's backup, and then Maccabee number 4. So you were on the money on Maccabee, and they have him starred by default. So the people at DFS here are really liking Devin Maccabee. So is McGowan a guy that you really had your eye on? Because I got to be honest, I really wasn't thinking a whole lot about him until I saw that projection number on him.
Yeah, so I really like him, actually. He's the New Mexico State transfer. He's either New Mexico or New Mexico State, one of those teams. But the reason is he gets a lot of passes. He was a pass funnel running back, and for that price. Now, the only thing is Dante Dowdle's also there, and they're going to be splitting time.
Correct.
But with the price and pass catching ability, that kind of cancels out normally if they're running back by committee and they're both around 6,000, I kind of just X them out. Forget
like
about
Penn State in the previous 3 years.
But when one is under 4,000 and catches passes, then it kind of piques my interest a little bit more. But I was also hoping that he was going to be lower owned and not one of the highest owned. But I mean, it makes sense with the price.
Yeah, it kind of feels like now that if people are running projections and the projections like him, it kind of makes sense that ownership's going to rise up. But, like we were kind of talking about earlier, like any opportunity you can get to save salary on this slate, you can use it because there's some good pay up options, and that can save you a lot of salary there at $3,700. So definitely a guy that's going to make my player pool. One thing also that I thought was interesting on their depth chart was that they literally had 2 running back positions as starters. It wasn't like one of those ors where it was Dowdell or McGowan. They were both listed in the lineup. I thought that was quite interesting. And I think that's a sign that it's going to be, if not a 50-50 split, maybe a situation where they use a lot of 2-back personnel, which I think will be very good for both guys.
Yeah, I agree. And then Davin Booth was another guy on that list. But the issue I have is I think that's going to be running back by committee too with Fluff Bothwell.
I think it's going to be a huge committee.
Yeah, it surprises me that one of them is getting so much ownership, especially with Shapen already getting ownership. Because I don't know, what's your take on that? Because for me, I don't really love playing quarterback with running back unless it's a pass-catching running back.
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 situations where I would go QB RB, and it is very much in the extremes. So one is if you have a pass-catching running back, like last year you could have played Kyle McCord and LaQuint Allen, like we talked about from week 1. The other example I like is if it's a team that runs a lot of read option or triple option, and the quarterback is part of the run game, and you're just saying, okay, this team's going to have a ton of rushing success. I'm going to play the quarterback and the running back. I've done that with Georgia Tech with Jamal Haynes and Haynes King, and it's been successful. And I don't really see that opportunity here on this slate a whole lot because there's not like any super prohibitive running quarterbacks. That's really the only situation I like to combine them in. And I think with the projection number on Booth, I think if you look at the matchup against Southern Miss and you look at the carry share from last year for Mississippi State and you just kind of import it over, I think he's going to project pretty well. But I don't think it's taking into account that Fluff Bothwell is a serious factor. And I don't think it's taken into account that Jeff Lebby traditionally uses 2 running backs or 3 running backs. He's not been a workhorse running back guy in his career. So it doesn't surprise me to see the projection on Booth that high, but I definitely think it's something that you need to read into a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so that's the running back position. Again, if you're watching us live, hop in the chat. If there's anybody you want us to talk about, any game you want us to talk about, let us know because we're here for you guys. We're kind of hitting our top plays and our strategy as we're going, but if you guys want some piece of specific knowledge, we're here for you. Also, if you're watching, please help us out. Hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube. Really does help a ton with kind of growing the channel, growing the community, because that's what we're here and what we're all about. So now let's talk about the wide receiver position, Zach. So the first thing that stood out to me when I saw the wide receiver position was you saw the duo of Ryan Williams and Jeremiah Smith, both at or above 9K. Whenever you have a wide receiver that starts their salary with a 9, that's something. So for these 2 guys, are you leaning one over the other? You playing both, fading both? What are your thoughts on those 2 guys?
So this is probably not very popular, but I just don't love paying $9,000 for a receiver because you absolutely have to have they have to score.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't score, then you need like 15 catches for 150 yards.
Yeah, you pretty much need multiple touchdowns or the 100-yard bonus without a doubt.
So you play them, and because Texas is definitely going to try to just game plan him out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I would target probably some of the cheaper, like Carnell Tate, some of the other cheaper guys from Ohio State. And then Ryan Williams, again, even though Bama's favorite, I think they're going to try to game plan him out of the game. And with so many injuries that Bama has, that's a lot easier for them to do that too.
So when it comes to Ryan Williams, I think he might make my pool because I think a Simpson-Williams stack makes a lot of sense to me. And I think you can save salary in all the places to do it. He's not going to be a core play for me. He's not going to be a big piece. But I just, on the offshoot that the Bama offense, without Jam Miller, in a game that they're favored, that they're able to throw the ball with a lot of success. We've seen Ryan Williams have these huge games. And so he's going to make my pool, but he's not going to be a big part of it. But because, like you said, they require so much to hit value. So if we're not really looking at one of those two guys, right, who would you say is the top wide receiver play on the slate?
So there's two guys that I like a lot.
Okay.
First one is Easton Messer, because like we've seen with tonight, with last week, with all of these teams, you got new quarterbacks, you got new receivers, but in this case, even though it's a different team, it's still the same quarterback, the same receiver. So they're chemistry already, and they're actually real life best friends from what I've heard.
I think they're roommates. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's going to be that volume there, and like we mentioned, that's one of the games that we want to target and shoot, and it could be shootout game. And so, again, I like targeting. Like last year, he averaged 12 DraftKings points a game, but only scored 4 TDs in the entire year because we knew Western Kentucky was throwing to 6 guys just like they did last week. They throw it all over the place, but he should be the main guy. And then the other guy that I like is Anthony Evans from Mississippi State. As we know with Jeff Levy, whenever he's at Ole Miss and other places, the slot receiver is the one that gets the love, gets all the looks, and just dominates the games. And that price is just really cheap for him if he's going to be peppered.
Yeah, so I'll kind of add on both those because you naturally hit on two guys that I liked as well. So when it comes to Messer, what I really like is that, especially in week 1, when you don't know who the wide receiver is going to be, it makes it so much harder to build stacks and to build out a player pool, right? And with Florida Atlantic, it really feels like, I don't want to say a sure thing because nothing's a sure thing in college football at all. So I don't want to say it's a sure thing, but it feels pretty comfortable that he's going to be their wide receiver 1, that he's going to be their target leader. And so I think that makes a lot of sense to play him. It makes a lot of sense to play a lot of FAU stacks with him because now you can work different combinations elsewhere and you don't have to worry about, well, hey, what if he throws to the other guy? Like I don't think you have that problem with Messer. With Evans, as much as I agree with you that he is the top Mississippi State play on the slate, it wouldn't shock me if we got a big game out of a Seydou Traore at tight end, or if we got a big game out of Jordan Mosley, who's just a few $500 cheaper. And we're also looking at a spot now where, we're talking about Evans. I've heard other people talk about Evans as well. Mosley could become a low-owned option that you could go to in case you're worried about, your Evans stacks not working. So I think with the Mississippi State side, it would be worth it to build out stacks with different receivers, whereas the FAU side, I'm really just honing in on Messer. Do you agree with that logic?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we know Mississippi State's probably going to throw it a ton.
Yeah.
And so it's similar to Western Kentucky. I was all over Hutchinson. Other people were all over Henry. They both did well, but obviously the much better play.
Right. Henry was the one that won all the money. Hutchinson was the one that helped you min cash. It's a similar situation. Like, honestly, like you just have to make sure that, you kind of, I don't want to say cover your bases, but like in week 1, we really don't know what we don't know. And that's a kind of a brilliant way to look at it. Now, also, one thing I will add with Messer's not super expensive. Veltkamp's not super expensive. You're not breaking the bank to get the two of them. You can fit Jalil Farouk into that lineup and have a nice little game stack because I also think it's quite likely that he ends up being the Maryland wide receiver 1.
Yeah.
Now,
like that.
I'll add this also. So we talked about the DFS Heroes initial projections, right? Do you care to guess who currently projects as their best value at the wide receiver position?
Is it EJ Williams or
He's number 2.
Okay, that was my guess, was EJ Williams.
It's a really good guess. So I'll pop it up on the screen now. It was Michael Jackson of Purdue.
That was my other guess.
Yeah, so basically, and I recorded my episode last night before we had a Purdue depth chart. Now we do. Michael Jackson, talented player from Georgia and USC, now starting at 3K against Ball State. He projects as like buying away the best value. Then you've also got, like you said, EJ Williams, starter from Indiana, 3K going up against ODU. Makes a ton of sense. Now, I don't get the love for Kyron Hudson. I don't. I don't know how the Penn State wide receiver room is going to shake out, so I'm probably just avoiding it entirely. I do get the love for Elijah Surratt, and then look right there, two guys we mentioned, Anthony Evans and Jalil Farouk. It's always good when you kind of come up with your takes on your own, and then you see the projections confirm it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
So now, with that projection, with that number on Michael Jackson, is that a guy that is going to be in your pool, out of your pool, close to a core play? What are you thinking there?
So, see, that's what's kind of hard for me is you always hate to fade a 3K guy if they're going to be super high owned. But again, to me, there's enough question marks on how this Purdue offense is going to look that obviously, if you're playing cash, he's probably going to be one of the highest owned players. Everybody likes getting that free square. But again, it's not, if there were probably more quarterbacks or more running backs that were more expensive that I'd be wanting to get to. But with all of the value of value mid-range running backs, mid-range receivers, I don't really see the need to go down there. I'll look into it some more. I'll be honest, wide receiver, it was what I had to look at last. So I really kind of ran out of time before we had the video. So I hadn't really got a whole lot of time to get into all these receivers, but yeah.
So to me, your logic's spot on, right? Like these guys would be super chalky if, the high-priced options were guys that everybody was wanting to get to. But a lot of the high-priced options, there's red flags, there's bad matchups. Like, they're not necessarily going to be the super most owned high-end options. And then also when it comes to both Jackson and Williams, the fact that they're both there at $3,000 is going to kind of split their ownership up because you're not going to see people play both of them, right? So what you can see is this, kind of turning out where both of them are kind of not super chalky, but a little chalky. And you can almost build lineups with, both of them in your player pool and both of them probably at about 25% of your lineups and feel pretty comfortable about it. And to me, that's like one of the best things that's happening there is that there's not just one 3K play that everybody likes. It's two. So to me, that really helps out lineup building.
And have we got an official depth chart from Indiana? Because the one on our lads is saying that EJ Williams is going to back up Surratt.
Okay.
So that's something to look at too.
That will be interesting. I know all of like the preseason things I read had Williams as the starter. Maybe there is not an official one yet, but I feel like everybody is expecting him to start, if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wanting to point that out because I know that our lads is not always the most up to date, but that's just because I couldn't find one earlier. I was looking at that, and that's what I saw was they had Surratt at the X and then EJ Williams as his backup.
Interesting.
With, Omar Cooper and Jonathan Brady, Brady out of the slot, and then Cooper being the other guy.
I'm going to be curious. I can't find an official one right now. I'll be curious to see if we do get an official one, what ends up being there. Because if he does end up being number 2 on their official, that will certainly depress his ownership. It'll certainly depress his projection too. So that'll be definitely interesting to see how that situation plays out. The one thing I will add with the Purdue situation, obviously we got Jackson starting, right? But he's not like the only playable Purdue wide receiver. Like he's going to project as the best value because he's the one at $3,000. But you got Nitro Tuggle, who's going to start at $4,700. You've got the tight end Christian Moore, who's going to start. He's also an even $3,000. So if it might be kind of a GPP type of deal that if you want to avoid the Michael Jackson chalk, play Tuggle or more at less ownership would be something I think is worth considering.
Yeah, I like that as well because we've seen it before. Somebody looks like a goose egg, free square, and it's week 1, week 2, and then they don't even see the field or something random.
Right, and
Oh,
then it becomes a situation where by playing them, what were you afforded to play, right? And you have to get those guys right if that guy's going to give you a very low score. So let's get caught up with the comments here. We got Brandon saying, "Thanks for the content. Got 3 little kids. I'm getting to bed." Totally understand that struggle. Totally get it. But yes, best of luck to you as well, Brandon. Hopefully the information we given here is going to help you guys win some money. We got a 2v2 from Darren. Says Jackson and Ray or Farouk and McGowan. I'm assuming Michael Jackson and Nolan Ray or Jalil Farouk and Seth McGowan, right? Farouk and McGowan I got. But I'm guessing that's Michael Jackson and Nolan Ray, right?
Yeah. I'm thinking that's
looking at Nolan Ray here. And that price is out about right. They're both about 10 grand total.
Yeah. So for me, I would say McGowan just because like you already mentioned, Farouk is probably going to be the top receiver for Maryland. It just didn't work out at OU and all that, but and then McGowan with even it being a running back by committee, getting those catches at that value, because like we just mentioned, Jackson could end up being a bust, and McGowan we at least know he catches passes, and he's going to touch the ball at least some.
And I actually think that the Farouk McGowan combo is going to be lesser owned as well. Because I think everybody who plays Michael Jackson is going to be rushing to spend up at running back and quarterback. And Nolan Ray is one of those spend up options.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead now, Zach, and I'm going to kind of load up DraftKings. So let's kind of start a sample build here, okay? And just kind of see where it takes us. Kind of the last thing we'll do here on the stream. So we're starting this build. We already talked about quarterback. Let's go ahead and throw in Shapen. All right. If DraftKings will let me click them. Holy crap. What's wrong with my tab here? Okay. It double clicked for me. Some reason it thought I was going to Jay Ducker as well, although that might be an option we could go with. So we got Shapen, and let's go ahead and stack him up. DraftKings running really slowly on my laptop tonight. I do apologize. And let's do Evans. So here's the question now. We got Shape and we got Evans. Do we want to double stack it, or do we want to start kind of diversifying?
I would probably, if I was going to do another stack piece, I'd probably just get something from Southern Miss side.
I like that idea.
Yeah, you got to think about that when you're stacking too. I'm sure you've mentioned this before, but just as a reminder for people, if you think a quarterback and receiver are going to combine for 60 points or whatever on DraftKings, well, the other team's most of the time going to have to be keeping up for that to keep happening, because when you get up 14, you get up 21, they don't keep passing, they don't keep throwing deep balls, and so
correct.
It's always a good idea. And me personally, I don't love, unless it's a smaller slate, I don't love doing multiple receivers from the same team, just because there's so many options to pick from.
Yeah, and like we talked about from the top, like the game that took off last year, Syracuse, Ohio, like it's the same situation, right? Like for it to really take off, you would have been much help to have a piece from both sides of that game. And so if we're really targeting this Mississippi State Southern Miss game, then that is going to really allow that game to take off. So I went onto the Twitter, aka X, and I found Southern Miss's official depth chart. And do you know what they did?
Probably the numerical or something.
Even funnier. They made it blank. That's just great. So we don't know who's going to start for Southern Miss at the wide receiver position. So if we're looking to build out this stack, we're either going to be flying based off of last year or just flying off of vibes. And I have heard Braylon Brown hyped up. There have been some reports out of camp that he's been looking good. Also, you got Elijah Metcalf, the leading receiver from Marshall last year. Now he's at Southern Miss. Honestly, if I were looking to really stack this up, I think the piece from Southern Miss that I might play, and I don't think a lot of people are going to do this. You know where I'm going with this?
Maybe.
The piece from Southern Miss that I might play is the quarterback. I might just go ahead and put in Braylon Braxton. Would that be a psycho move or a galaxy brain move?
No, I mean I like Braxton. I mean he did well at Tulsa in some games, and he also has the rushing ability as well. So
see, that's my thinking is like if Southern Miss is keeping this close, it's highly likely that he's contributing touchdowns one way or another. So we've got our stack built. We've got 59.80 left. So we're going to have to save salary eventually. But at running back, we can go ahead and put in our guy Maccabee. And that's not going to change our average salary remaining a whole lot. At wide receiver, we can go ahead and put in... You want to put in Messer?
Yeah, we can go ahead and see what we can do from there.
Yeah, so that would give us 53.66 remaining for a wide receiver, a flex, and a running back. So basically, we could get one pay-up option, or we could just go like entirely a mid-range build here. I think there's options for either scenario. Anybody that stands out?
Well, so how much would be left if you put in McGowan and Ducker for the receiver?
Let's do that. If we go McGowan, 3,700, that's going to build us some salary right there. 6,200. So we could get Ducker, make it a 3 running back build. And then at wide receiver, it could land on Farouk.
Or Bernard or Pena.
Yeah.
Wait,
that's a really solid build.
I wish Pena didn't go to Penn State. I mean,
yeah, if Pena was still at Syracuse and he was at that price, that would be like click. Because honestly, the Syracuse receivers aren't that far down here, are they? Yeah, Darrell Gill at 5,700. He's an option too.
Yeah, and I will say with Southern Miss, one of the receivers when you had it pulled up, Micah Davis, the Ole Miss transfer, he's only 4,100. So again, that's one of those situations where we're going to have to. Thankfully, it's the first game. But see if we get any news beforehand or see who's warming up, because we did end up last week with Hunter Watson. We got the confirmation that he was starting.
Correct. Well, because and the thing is, they're the home team, so they like home teams like to announce the starting lineups in the stadium 45 minutes before kickoff. So if we get that, and it does end up being a a Micah Davis or a Braylon Brown starting, that could open up some value kind of change your player pool. Because this is a game environment that I think we're really going to want to get to, and those are going to be options that you can use to get to it. All right, so I kind of like that sample build. Now, we're not closing it out, because what would happen if we closed it out is everybody would just dupe us, right? But we don't want to be duped. So, definitely like the logic, the thinking behind that sample build. And honestly, if you wanted to, you could go back and change Braylon Braxton. There's a few options you could change him to as well. But the bottom line is, y'all, if you start building out on this slate, you start playing around with it, you can find guys that you like. You can find ways to put them in. This is a slate where, to me, there is enough value that you don't need to play the 3K punts. You don't need to pay up for the top quarterbacks and running backs and wide receivers. This is a slate where you can really live in the mid-range. And I think what we just did with that build showcased that to a T.
Yeah, I agree. Because like you mentioned with the 3K, you're going to spend the money somewhere. But and I say this a lot with college basketball too. You add up the guys, so like you get 3K, and then you say you get a Jeremiah Smith, so that's 12,000.
Mm-hmm.
So you need at least 35 plus from those guys. And so if your 3K guy busts, it gets like 2 points, 1 catch for 20 yards or whatever, then the other guy's going to has to
Make
get
up for it.
Yeah, the 35 plus. And I just don't, with the game environment for Ohio State, Texas, I just don't see, and I might be wrong, but I don't see somebody getting like 10 catches for 150 yards and 2 touchdown type game.
Yeah, and I think it's much more likely with at the end of the day. You said going with a 9K and a 3K and needing about 35 points. Well, if you just do the same thing with 2 6Ks, it just feels a whole lot more likely on this slate that a combo of like Evans and Maccabee could get you that 36 points than a combo of like a Smith and a 3K punt play.
Yeah, and I'll definitely have to see, because right now we're going off of early projections and everything, see how it looks on Saturday. Because if we do get word that, like Manning or Williams or Smith are coming in low owned, then that kind of changes a little bit. But you just kind of think, you kind of assume with the casual players that those guys are going to get ownership because those are the ones that people recognize.
Right. Well, and they will, even though they're not on track to be necessarily the best plays, they're going to get ownership because they're at the top of the board. And because any casual who's new to college football DFS playing this for the first time ever is going to say, "Ooh, Jeremiah Smith, click." I know like back when I was in college and I started playing this, I fell into that trap too of like back in the day, it was like, "Ooh, Derrick Henry," like I'm just going to click that guy and I'm going to figure out a way to make the rest of it work. And I don't think this is necessarily the best slate to do that. I think that I will say, I don't think we have time to fully break it down because we're going about an hour here. I think that Friday's slate is the type of slate that you do that with because I think the pay up options on Friday's slate are really, really good.
Yeah, we can, unless you got something else for this one, we can go ahead and go into Friday a little bit if you want.
So let's do that. Let's close this out with one thing. We'll kind of call our shot here. Pick one player for the Saturday main slate that breaks the slate and is the guy you have to win all the money. Who you think that one player is going to be?
Put me on the spot here. That's a little tough.
I know. Yeah, I'm scrolling because I'm thinking about my answer as well. Because it's not an easy question. It's a very loaded question.
I want to say, because I'm thinking immediately between Shapen and Messer.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think I'm going to give the edge to Messer just because Mississippi State is favored. Florida Atlantic's 2 touchdown underdogs, so they're going to be passing the whole time. And we know that he's probably going to be, other than Williams and Smith, he's probably the most probably consistent of the receivers on the
Correct.
As far as what you're going to get from them, and they have the chemistry with the quarterback. So I would say probably Messer.
So I'm going to go slightly outside the box, but it's still receiver. I'm going Elijah Surratt. So like you think about Indiana here, right? And they've got a super high projected total. They've got a new quarterback. They're going to be looking to break him in. And it's a pretty solid chance that he just peppers Surratt and Surratt gets 100 yards and 2-3 touchdowns. And even if he does not play the final quarter, that could be enough. So that's my argument for Surratt.
Yeah, I don't hate that either. He's another one too. Even though it is a new quarterback, but he's been the guy for Indiana for a while.
So that does it for the Saturday slate. So, Zach, while I'm pulling up the Friday sheet, why don't you tell the people where they can find more from you?
Okay, so these sheets will be posted on Big Country DFS on Twitter. And also you can find the link to our Discord on the pinned post there. And then also the Fantasy Corner Discord. Both of those places. My Discord's, there's a lot of people in there and they follow and they like the sheets, but they don't really chat as much as the Fantasy Corner one. So I kind of do both. I like the chat because there's a lot of chat going on in the Fantasy Corner one, but I'm in both places, posted to both places. So,
Yeah, the fantasy corner one, that's to me, that's the most like the funny one to sweat it out in is like, like somebody scores a touchdown. I'm gonna go check and see what memes and what jokes have been posted, right? And we had fun in there today talking about the Wyoming and Akron game. We called it the pillow fight, and I think that was kind. I think we should have been more brutal than pillow fight.
Yeah, Gillenborg killed me today.
Yeah, he's and he could still very well be a tight end that plays in the NFL, but that Wyoming offense is not aesthetically pleasing. Not at all. So we're going to do kind of a quick breakdown of the Friday slate here. So rapid fire, we'll go through each position. Y'all remember what I said a few minutes ago, how the pay up options are great? I think quarterback, Haynes King, 9,800, that's a guy that's going to be in a ton of my lineups. Are you going to talk me out of that, or are you going to hype him up with me?
No, I'm right there with you. He's the best play on the slate, in my opinion. Somebody that can get 50 plus because he can throw for 300, he can run for 100 and get 5 touchdowns on the way.
Now, what I'm likely to do, I haven't started building yet for this slate. I've done my research. My content for it is out. I haven't started building. What I'm likely to do is to take Haynes King, who's the top quarterback on the slate, who's likely to be pretty highly owned, and I'm going to pair him with like the mid to low range upside guys. So like I'm going to play King and Ashford as my 2 quarterbacks, or King and Harrell as my 2 quarterbacks. I know going in that King's going to be a lot of salary and going to be a lot of ownership. So I think taking shots on high risk, high reward guys for your second quarterback is probably going to be the move here on this slate. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But it's definitely shots that I'm willing to take.
Yeah, I kind of agree. AJ Swan, even though he didn't work out in the SEC, I think he could be another one. Probably need to change that from mega to a little bit higher, but he's another one that's cheap. Dexter Williams, we know him, like you mentioned, another cheap guy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's not like that Wake Forest defense is going to be the 85 Bears out there either. Like that, Kennesaw State's going to score a few points.
Yeah. Well, Wake Forest, it's still Wake Forest, kind of like Purdue, still Purdue.
Yeah. I do think long term, I think Dickert is going to be able to turn that program around. It's just such a hard team to recruit for because they have really high academic standards. And so they're really selecting from a pool of guys in terms of who they can even bring on campus. And then add that to the fact that they got to want to actually go to Wake Forest too. So it's a tough spot to win, but I think that Dickert will be able to get them pointed back in the right direction. So let's talk about running backs now. So you got Cornist in your core. So tell the people a little bit about Cornist and why he made your core here.
Okay, so he is starting running back for 4,200. Central Michigan's always been a run first offense. They've had workhorse backs over the years, and San Jose State last year was just not good at all against.
Right.
So he should get plenty of volume and one of those guys that helps you fit in the studs like Haynes King.
Yeah, and I think he's a good call for a cheap back. I do think that you're going to have to find a way to play a cheap back, especially if you want to play Haynes King at quarterback, because, man, these pay-up running backs look really good to me. Like Damon Claiborne, 8,600 going against Kennesaw State. We know he's a workhorse. We know he has home run potential. That's just a smash. Jaden Thomas going up against Sam Houston, where Sam Houston, a lot of people are going to look at the Western Kentucky game and be like, see, they let up 400 passing yards, but Western Kentucky could run anytime they wanted to as well. So I think that that's another good look, a pay-up option. I could even see an argument for Bryson Washington, but just because he's going to get all of the carries for Baylor now that their running backs are so hurt. So, yeah, I think this is a good slate to pair Trey Cornish, cheap back, and then one of those high-priced backs. You could even go 3 running backs on this slate. I just think those high-priced running backs are really, really something here on this slate.
Yeah, with Claiborne, he's also in my core. And to me, it's different. I was fading Taylor tonight. A lot of people were all over Taylor. But my logic was Minnesota has a new quarterback. They're going to try to break him in. And also, if you looked at last year, Taylor didn't get the workhorse volume until conference play. he was only getting 10 to 15 carries a game. And even though he gets the passes, it just didn't look like, and with Minnesota projected to win. But this is a different situation because to me, yes, it's a new quarterback, but Ashford, we know, has never historically been a great quarterback. And we know what we're getting with Claiborne. And unlike Taylor in the non-conference, he got workhorse carries still last year too.
Right. It's not unlike what we were talking about earlier, where you have a situation where you can play a running back and a quarterback together because of the fact that it's just so correlated to the run game. Like if the Wake offense is having success, it's going to be with running zone read. It's going to be with both of them getting carries. So I think that it's really worth a good look to go ahead and play both Claiborne and Ashford, whether it's in the same lineup or separate lineups.
Yeah, and one other thing I want to mention, I hate the running back by committee, but we know Dominion from Arkansas, he's a talented back.
Yes, he had a few huge games in relief of starters at Arkansas, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, and then Welch should be the starter at Colorado. So those are just two other guys I want to mention there.
Yeah, plenty of options at that running back position. And honestly, plenty of options at this wide receiver position because there's just so many guys that are like that their price tag starts with a 3 and they're a starter on a good offense. So is there one that stands out to you?
Well, those first two right there. I mean,
okay.
Bradley, last week he had 6 catches for 7 targets for 137 yards against Idaho State. And then Sam Houston State couldn't stop anything last week.
Right.
And so that just is probably going to be your 80%, 90% owned play. But also Hawkins was good last year too, and he was a starter, and he's a starter now. I don't understand the price on Hawkins at all.
I really think they dropped the ball on that price tag. And I thought that honestly, that Cole Wilson for Baylor was pretty cheap as well at 4,200. Yeah. Like this is an offense that's going to have a ton of volume in terms of passing and rushing. Like there's going to be a ton of plays in this game. So even if you don't think Baylor scores 40 plus, they're going to have a ton of fantasy points that are scored. And just being a starter on that offense, to me, should be worth more in their salary than what they're priced at.
Yeah, and then you have Trigg, tight end, 3,800. And then you have Leary and Singleton, the Georgia Tech transfers. Singleton, we got to watch his injury news.
Yes.
But for 3,600, again, that's just these prices. And Marion Miller is 4,000. The prices on these receivers are not anything like the other slates we've seen so far.
And really, the only receiver that they're like daring you to play at like a high price tag is Cam Coleman. Like the thing is like I feel like he's appropriately priced, but at the same time, there's so many receivers that are not that I would rather pay up at the running back position and play some cheapy wide receivers than pay up for Cam Coleman.
Yeah, both the San Jose State receivers that should get a ton of volume, similar to Ashlock and Sinkale from Hawaii, and then Malik Rutherford. I mean, that price is ridiculous too. Return starter for Georgia Tech.
Yeah, and if you're playing Haynes King, I don't think you have to play him stacked, but it's really easy to click Rivers or Rutherford as a stack. Like we were talking earlier, like you can feel pretty confident that it's going to be one of the two of them that are going to get all the volume in that offense. So last thing we'll do here. We'll do like we did for week 0. We'll do a pick one. So the one receiver situation that could be super profitable if we get it right is San Jose State, because they had Nick Nash last year, one of the best receivers in all college football, one of the best DFS plays in all college football week in and week out. We don't know who the new Nick Nash is. So are you going to be playing Scudero? You're going to be playing Leland Smith? Or even somebody outside the box like a Matthew Coleman or Malachi Riley? If you had to pick one from that group, who are you looking at?
It'd probably be, if I had to pick one, probably be Scudero.
Yes, I'm on board with that.
Slot. And that's where I believe Nash came out of, was the slot. So,
Yeah, the other one I would consider would be Matthew Coleman. I think I'm on Scudero and Coleman more than Smith and Riley, because of the fact that Coleman did it in the bowl game. right? Like Nick Nash was gone, and they said, okay, we're just going to run the same offense. Coleman, you play Nash's spot, and he just killed it in that bowl game. And I think there's a non-zero chance that they go back to that, but all indications seem to be that it's Scudero's job.
Yeah.
And then last one, we've got another wide receiver situation that is quite crowded with the Colorado Buffaloes. So let me ask you this first. Colorado, is that a situation that you are going to attack more or less now that they've got Caden Salter as the starter? And if you're playing it, which one are you going to play?
Yeah, I haven't really thought about what I want to do with Colorado a whole lot yet, but that is one of the better game environments. And if we're expecting King to have a good game, then we're probably expecting Colorado to have a good game.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to pick one, it'd probably be a Marion Miller, but I could also see just using Salter by himself too.
I think that might be the move, honestly. I did that a lot when he was at Liberty, and I very rarely regretted it, right? Like, just because he is such a runner and he does have such upside with his legs. He can obviously get one wide receiver there if he wanted to, but I think why waste your time trying to figure out who it might be when there's so many other good options on the board and you just don't have to do it. That's my take.
Yep. There's one more question in the chat.
Okay. I see it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. So it says, back to Saturday, do you have a preference between Veltkamp or Braxton? So here's how I would answer that. I think on paper, Veltkamp makes a lot more sense. I think if you are playing Easton Messer, Veltkamp makes a lot more sense. If you are looking to play GPPs or if you are looking to stack the Mississippi State Southern Miss game, Braxton would be a guy I would go with. So I guess kind of the short answer would be Veltkamp Cash, Braxton GPP.
Yeah, I would kind of agree with that too. And like you mentioned, just kind of depends on what your build is. Because if you're going with Shapen and you're trying to stack that game, you just throw in Braxton. But if you're trying to stack the Florida Atlantic game, get Veltkamp. So I think it kind of depends there as well.
And one thing we kind of glossed over because it hasn't been named yet. If Maryland names Malik Washington the starter, that's a guy I'm interested in. Just bet on the talent, bet on the system, bet on the matchup. Like, even though I've never seen the kid play football, I'm willing to bet on all of those things at a reasonable price tag in week one.
Yeah, and that's the only issue with doing this on Thursday, especially week one. During the 5 weeks from down the road when we already kind of know everything, that'll be different. But like you said, we still have some teams that they're going to wait until Saturday morning or Friday night to give us the depth chart.
Drives me crazy. Like, I'm not going to get on my soapbox about it, but like, there's people in the building for your opponent whose job it is to watch the entire roster and have a scouting report, right? Like you have to, there's like, when I was doing that at Charlotte, I had to have a report on the backup guard, right? Like, I wasn't necessarily the one that was doing that, but somebody in my office was. I was the guy that I put together the sack scramble reel because I worked with the defensive line. And so probably the most entertaining thing I ever did and the most like legacy thing I ever did was when I was at Charlotte, right? We played Louisville for the opener of the 2016 season. Do you know where I'm going with this?
Yeah, I think so.
So their quarterback that year was Lamar Jackson, and he had played as a true freshman in 2015. And so it was my job in the offseason, in the summer, to put together the sack scramble reel for Lamar Jackson. And so I had to go watch every single one of his dropbacks. And if it was a sack or a scramble, I would add it to the playlist, right? So that way the D-line could have it to watch and they could see, how he moves in the pocket, what he does when he gets pressured, all that stuff. And we're watching it with the D-line in a position meeting one day. And the D-line coach would pause it. And he'd be like, all right, guys, what do y'all think happens here? And they'd be like, oh, he gets sacked. Like, they got him. Like, they got him. They're going to get him down. And then he'd be like, all right, Mike, what happens? And I'd be like, yeah, he breaks a tackle and runs for 27 yards. and then he hit play. And they'd be like, what? And we're like, yeah, Lamar Jackson's really good, guys. And they really took it to us that day. But we also were the start of his Heisman campaign, so he can thank us for that. But yeah, point being, there's people in college football whose job it is to watch all of the film on all of the players. These coaches are not gaining a competitive advantage by not releasing a depth chart, and it would really help us out if they release depth charts. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, well, hopefully by next week we'll kind of have an idea of what's going on. We'll have a little bit of targets to go off of. A little
yes,
bit more.
Having targets in a box score at this point would be preferred to the depth chart. like even though it's a 1-game sample size, at least having that to go off of will be so welcome, considering all the unknowns we're dealing with this week.
Yep.
All right, so we're going to go ahead. We don't have any more questions in the chat, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it on up there, guys. So before we get out of here, Zach, I do know you have a game tomorrow night, right?
Yeah, high school football starting here. We got our first game of the season. Thankfully, it's at home, so I won't be. The team we're playing is about 3 hours away. So if it was an away game, I'd be getting home about 2 a.m. So it'll be nice to get home by 11.
And let me tell you, that's a long drive home if you lose too.
Yeah. Well, we had a 4-hour road trip to start 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Yeah.
Sheesh. I do not envy that because I used to coach high school football. I say that like I'm like really old, but it was basically I really wanted to coach high school football for a long time. It was what I did. It was why I went to college at Charlotte and did what I did. And then when my daughter was born, it's like a full-time job. So like I just wasn't spending any time with her. So I moved from football to I now do girls flag football. And let me tell you, no 3-hour road trips with that. No late 2 a.m. Friday nights with that. So definitely been enjoying that. Yeah. So that's where you'll be Friday night. Do you have any big plans for week 1, like the main slate or the night slate or whatever? You doing anything special for it?
Not really. We're gonna get together as a family with her family. So I'll still be watching. I'll just take my phone, my iPad, whatever, and sneak around watching some games. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then probably be looking at the night slate here in a little bit too.
Like I don't know what my plan for the night is. It'll be whatever my wife wants to do at night because I have told her for months now. I'm like, hey, Saturday, August 30th, Texas is playing Ohio State at noon. I will be parked in front of a television. Like you can be here, the kids can be here, everybody can be here, but I will be here watching that game. And then we can do whatever she wants to do after that. That's my logic for Saturday. Texas, Ohio State, I have been looking forward to. I will be watching that, and I cannot wait for it.
Yeah, it should be a great game.
Like I can't remember a week 1 matchup it had as much national implications as this one did. I really can't.
Yeah, normally we got a bunch of Purdue against FCS and all those.
Or like even as a Texas fan, our big non-conference games have been week 2 lately. Like last year against Michigan, year before against Alabama. Like usually, you play one of the UT whatever schools in week 1, and then you play your big opponent week 2. Nah, they're jumping right into it with Ohio State week 1. So
yeah.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and close it out there, guys. So appreciate everybody who was joining us live. Before you head on out, help us out, hit that like button. And remember, links are in the description for everything that you might need. Follow Zach on Twitter at Big Country DFS. Follow me on Twitter at Mike's Money Picks. Join the Discord. And hopefully everything we talked about here today and all the information with the sheets and everything else will help you guys win some money on Saturday. And hopefully you guys will come back to us. I'm not going to guarantee that we'll have this every week because we both got fluid schedules, but every time we can be on here, getting on here and chopping it up, we're going to do it because it's a lot of fun and it's a lot of information and not a lot of time. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. But that's going to do it here for this episode, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you guys next time.
Thank you.